Hola, ¿qué tal? ¿Cómo estás? Espero que muy bien. Estamos en un nuevo encuentro de los podcasts de la Libertad de la Fundación Atlas y hoy vamos a charlar con Dan Mitchell, un economista de los Estados Unidos. Él es presidente del Centro para la Libertad y Prosperidad. Tiene un largo currículum, voy a leer algunas partes nada más. Él fue Senior Fellow en Cato Institute, especializado en política fiscal, en reforma impositiva, competencia impositiva, el peso del Estado sobre la economía. También él fue parte de Senior Fellow en Heritage Foundation. Ha escrito decenas y decenas de artículos en medios como Wall Street Journal, New York Times, ha aparecido también en televisión, es una persona consultada con mucha frecuencia. Y han obtenido su PhD, su doctorado en economía en George Mason University, y vamos a tener la posibilidad de charlar con él. Hi Dan, how are you doing? Thank you for this possibility.
I'm glad to be talking with you.
Okay, I have to say that you were here in Argentina, invited by Federico Fernández by la Fundación Bases, analyzing our tax situation.
Yes, I was there earlier in November. It's great to have been in Argentina. The excitement about all the reform happening, and hopefully a very bright future.
Okay, see, it's very interesting, and I would like to ask you about the situation, this situation in the U.S. and even in Europe, if you want to talk about the tax pressure, for example.
The big problem that we have both in the United States and Europe is demographic change. Our populations are getting older. Old people are living longer, and since I have a lot of gray hair, I like the fact that we live longer, but we're also having fewer and fewer children. And when you have welfare states that were created decades ago, they were created when there was an assumption that there would always be a bigger generation of children and a big generation of workers to support a small number of old people, because of course the welfare state is primarily about healthcare and pension spending for older people. Well, because of this demographic change, you're seeing tremendous long-run pressure on the viability of the welfare state. It's especially acute in Europe. Countries like Italy, France, where the government just collapsed, but even in the United States, our so-called Social Security Trust Fund is going to go bankrupt early next decade. Now, that's mostly just a bookkeeping exercise, but it nonetheless is very symbolic of the fact that we have the same spending pressures that exist in Europe, but we maybe have 15 or 20 years more time to try to fix things. But of course, the problem is, both in Europe and the United States, a lot of politicians don't want to fix the fiscal problems. They want to make them worse by expanding the burden of government spending, imposing even more taxes. So fiscally, when you're talking about demographic change and these entitlement programs, mostly to support the elderly, it's a very, very depressing outlook for both the United States and Europe.
And when you were talking, I was thinking about Buchanan and the limits of public spending. Is there any way to limit government spending?
The best system that exists in the world today, I think, is the spending cap in Switzerland. It's called the debt brake, but what it practically does is limit the growth of government. And ever since it was imposed by voters, because they did it in a referendum back in 2001, and it took effect starting in 2003, ever since the Swiss voters imposed the spending cap, government spending has grown by an average of only 2.3% a year. That's tremendous. In the United States, it's grown by almost 5% a year. In other countries, of course, it's even a worse outlook. So the key in terms of fiscal policy, the most important variable is not deficits and debt. Deficits and debt are the symptom. The real problem is the growth of government. And Switzerland, by putting a cap on how fast government can grow, Switzerland, I think, has shown a path that hopefully the United States will copy at some point, but basically every country in the world should copy what Switzerland has done. You want to, in effect, put handcuffs on the politicians, because their natural tendency in politics is to buy votes with other people's money. That's basically what public choice is all about. What's the incentive of a politician? It's to buy votes with other people's money. If you limit how fast government can grow, you not only solve the most important problem, which is government consuming too much of society's resources, but you also solve the symptom of red ink. Because while the rest of the world has ever-increasing debt levels, ever since Switzerland adopted the so-called debt brake, government debt has fallen as a share of GDP. So Switzerland is the role model that the US should follow, France should follow, Argentina should follow, the entire world should copy Switzerland.
Okay, Dan, thank you for your opinion, and thank you for being so brave defender of our ideas in the world.
Thank you. Very good talking to you, Martin.